The meal on this plate wasn't chosen by hunger or a menu. It was set 1,000 years ago, and it hasn't changed since. On Mount Athos, that's not a thought experiment. It's lunch. In the last video we looked at when the monks eat, the fasting rhythm that shapes their year. Now we look at what's actually on the plate. Because when you strip away meat, dairy, eggs, and most of the time even oil, what's left turns out to be one of the most studied eating patterns on Earth. Start with the foundation. Bread. Not the soft bleached bread most of us know. Whole grain, made from stone-milled wheat, natural sourdough starter, and spring water. In many monasteries, the baking itself is treated as a form of prayer. It's the anchor of nearly every meal. Then come the legumes, lentils, beans, chickpeas, peas. This is where the monks get most of their protein day after day with no meat to lean on. Boiled simply, seasoned with herbs, sometimes just salt and vinegar on the strictest days. Around that, vegetables, almost always seasonal, much of it grown in the monastery's own gardens. And wild greens, what Greeks call horta, gathered from the hillsides, bitter and dense with nutrients. On a strict fasting day, a plate might be nothing more than boiled greens and a piece of bread. And then there's the one ingredient that ties it all together: olive oil. Athos has been called a land without butter. With no meat and no dairy, olive oil is the primary fat, often the only one. And it's what makes a simple plate of beans and greens satisfying enough to fuel a day of labor and prayer. The monasteries press their own, from old groves their monks have kept for centuries. The detail that changes the picture: on the strictest fasting days, Wednesdays and Fridays, and much of the great fasting seasons, even the olive oil goes. No oil, no wine, just boiled or raw plant food in its plainest form. The oil returns on the days the calendar allows it. Nothing is constant, everything moves with the cycle. Fish sits at the very edge of the diet. Never meat, that's absolute, but fish, squid, and octopus appear a handful of times a year, on feast days when the calendar permits. Grilled or braised slowly with wine and tomato. It's a celebration food, not a staple. And wine, made by the monasteries themselves, appears the same way, in moderation on non-fasting days, alongside a shared meal. Never on a strict fast, always within the rhythm. Step back and look at the whole plate across a year, and something familiar emerges. Whole grains, legumes as the main protein, vegetables and wild greens. Olive oil as the primary fat. Fish only occasionally, meat never, wine in moderation. Researchers have a name for almost exactly this pattern: the Mediterranean diet, except the monks were living it, unbroken, for 1,000 years before anyone drew up the guidelines. The difference is that for us this is a diet, something we choose, track, and usually abandon. For them, it was never a diet at all. It was simply what the calendar served. And that may be the most important ingredient of all. Not the food itself, but never having to decide. If you'd like the core of this eating pattern laid out simply, the foods, the rhythm, the everyday version of it, I've put it in a free one-page guide, linked in the description. Next time we go to the single ingredient researchers keep circling back to, the one thing the Mediterranean diet is famous for, and the reason it may work at all. Subscribe and we'll keep going together.